You think you can just take what isn't yours? The words echoed across the empty gas station lot as the late afternoon sun dipped behind the horizon, casting long shadows over the rows of SUVs parked under the flickering neon lights. Vanessa Carter adjusted the strap of her tote bag and took a slow breath, her calm presence a stark contrast to the tense posture of Sheriff Lucas Harrow, who stood a few feet away, hands on his hips, his badge catching the last rays of sunlight. The air was thick with the smell of gasoline, the faint hum of passing cars on the nearby highway mixing with the distant wail of a siren, and a small cluster of onlookers had gathered, curious eyes peering from behind their pumps and vehicles. Vanessa's dark brown eyes scanned the lot with quiet focus, her posture straight, shoulders relaxed, yet there was an undeniable authority in the way she carried herself. Lucas stepped closer, his boots clacking against the concrete, and his voice, steady but laced with impatience, cut through the ambient noise. "Ma'am, step over here. We need to ask you some questions about the SUV you were seen near." Vanessa tilted her head slightly, a faint, knowing smile brushing her lips, and replied evenly, "Of course, officer. I'm happy to answer any questions you have." She moved as requested, her movements deliberate but unhurried, drawing the subtle attention of the small crowd. Lucas's gaze flicked toward her hands, noting the absence of any nervous gestures, and he hesitated, momentarily thrown by her composed demeanor. Vanessa's mind, however, was already running through the silent checklist she had practiced countless times. Observe, assess, respond. She allowed the sheriff's questions to hang in the air for a moment, letting the tension build, while her mind cataloged the situation, noting the positioning of the cameras, the few witnesses, and the patterns of light across the lot. A nearby driver adjusted his rearview mirror and squinted, curious, while a teenager pumping gas whispered to a friend, eyes wide. Vanessa's gaze shifted subtly, locking briefly with the sheriff's, holding it with a calm intensity that seemed to make him blink. She could feel the unspoken judgment of the crowd pressing down, the whispers and sideways glances creating a ripple of unease around the scene, yet she did not flinch. Lucas, trying to regain his composure, gestured toward the SUV and asked, "Did you take anything from this vehicle?" Vanessa's voice remained steady, measured. "No, officer. I was merely passing by. Perhaps someone misunderstood my presence here." The sheriff's jaw tightened, his tone sharpening, but Vanessa did not waver, her posture and calm gaze anchoring the moment. Every subtle shift in her stance, every small inflection in her voice carried the quiet weight of authority, invisible yet palpable. The setting sun highlighted the contours of her face, her expression unwavering, revealing nothing yet speaking volumes. A soft wind rustled the leaves of a nearby tree, carrying with it the faint scent of oil and asphalt, adding to the cinematic tension that seemed to wrap around the lot. Lucas took a deep breath, clearly frustrated by the lack of nervousness he expected to see, while Vanessa subtly reached into her bag, adjusting a folder without drawing attention, the insignia barely visible to anyone but herself, a hint of the power she held just beneath the surface. The crowd's murmurs grew slightly, a low wave of curiosity and uncertainty as they watched the interaction unfold, some shifting on their feet, others crossing arms, trying to appear casual but unable to ignore the unfolding scene. Vanessa's mind remained clear, cataloging everything, her thoughts precise, her training as an FBI agent guiding her calm exterior. She knew the sheriff's assumptions were based on bias, his sense of control tied to the uniform and the color of his skin, but she also knew that in a matter of moments, the truth would alter the dynamics entirely. Lucas leaned slightly closer, his tone dropping, almost as if confiding in himself. "I don't understand why you're so calm. Most people in this situation." He trailed off, glancing at the witnesses, unsure how to finish the sentence. Vanessa simply nodded, her expression serene, eyes steady, reflecting a quiet confidence that unsettled him. The sun now just a thin sliver above the horizon, casting an amber glow across the lot, and the hum of the pumps punctuated the silence, creating a rhythm that seemed to count down the seconds before the inevitable reveal, the moment when perception and reality would collide, leaving the sheriff and the witnesses utterly redefined in their understanding of who held the true authority in that small gas station under the fading light. Vanessa Carter shifted her weight slightly, the hum of the neon lights above her blending with the distant murmur of the highway, as she calmly observed Sheriff Lucas Harrow checking the SUV once more, his brows furrowed in confusion and the tension in his shoulders betraying the uncertainty he did not wish to admit. The air was cool now as the sun dipped completely below the horizon, the lot bathed in an amber glow, and the faint scent of gasoline mixed with the crisp evening air, carrying a hint of autumn chill. Vanessa's eyes flicked toward the small crowd of bystanders, their faces a mix of curiosity, apprehension, and silent judgment, yet she gave them only a small, polite nod, acknowledging their presence without breaking her composure. She had learned long ago that moments like these demanded patience, observation, and the ability to project calm authority, skills that had been honed through years of training and experience. Lucas straightened up and took a step closer, his voice carrying a hint of frustration as he asked for her identification once again, and Vanessa reached into her tote bag slowly, deliberately, pulling out her credentials with precise, controlled movements, ensuring that each action was measured and unhurried. She handed them to him without a word, her dark eyes maintaining steady contact, conveying quiet confidence that made the sheriff hesitate for a brief moment. The fluorescent lights above flickered slightly, casting sharp lines across the lot, accentuating the contrast between the sheriff's rigid posture and Vanessa's composed presence. The bystanders leaned forward subtly, their attention riveted, sensing that something was about to unfold, the tension in the air palpable, like the calm before a storm that everyone could feel but no one could name. Lucas's hand trembled just slightly as he took the credentials, and he scanned them quickly, the letters and insignia catching the artificial light in a way that drew a subtle gasp from the closest onlooker. Vanessa did not flinch, did not shift her gaze, her posture unwavering, radiating a quiet authority that contrasted sharply with the sheriff's flustered demeanor. For a moment, the lot seemed to hold its breath, the usual sounds of cars and distant traffic fading into the background, replaced by the silent, expectant focus of those present. Vanessa's lips curved in a faint, controlled smile, not one of triumph but of assurance, of calm inevitability, as if she had known all along that the truth would surface exactly when it needed to. Lucas's eyes widened ever so slightly as he realized the significance of the credentials, and the rigidity in his stance softened imperceptibly, replaced by a flicker of disbelief. The ambient sounds returned slowly, the distant hum of tires on asphalt, the soft click of gas pumps, yet the sheriff's earlier confidence had dissipated, replaced by a careful, almost hesitant attention to Vanessa's every movement. She maintained her calm, adjusting her bag slightly, her eyes sweeping the lot in a controlled, deliberate scan, registering every subtle shift in posture, every glance from the witnesses, every tiny detail that could inform the next step. The subtle interplay of light and shadow, the murmurs of the onlookers, the steady evening breeze, all of it combined into a cinematic tableau where Vanessa's quiet power contrasted starkly with the sheriff's fading bravado. She remained composed, patient, projecting the kind of authority that did not demand volume or aggression, yet was undeniable in its presence. Lucas finally lifted his eyes from the credentials, his expression a mixture of surprise and reluctant acknowledgement, as the gravity of the situation settled over him. Vanessa's measured calm had shifted the dynamic entirely, every observer aware, even subconsciously, that the balance of authority had changed. The shadows lengthened as night approached, the lot quiet except for the distant traffic and the occasional shuffle of feet, emphasizing the contrast between Vanessa's unwavering composure and the sheriff's faltering control. In that moment, the lot itself seemed to bear witness to the reversal of perception and the subtle, undeniable assertion of true authority. The evening had fully settled over the gas station lot, the sky a deep indigo dotted with the first few stars of the night, and the fluorescent lights above the pumps hummed softly, casting pools of white illumination that reflected off the polished surfaces of the SUVs. Vanessa Carter stood near the edge of the lot, her posture relaxed but deliberate, each movement controlled and purposeful, her dark eyes sweeping the scene with precision. The small crowd that had gathered lingered cautiously, whispers dying down as the tension shifted from suspicion to anticipation, their curiosity replaced by a growing awareness that something unusual was unfolding. Sheriff Lucas Harrow fidgeted slightly, glancing at his radio, and then back at the credentials in his hands, the weight of the evening pressing on his shoulders as he struggled to reconcile the calm, confident woman before him with the authority he had assumed he held over the situation. Vanessa took a step toward the SUV, her movements measured, her gaze meeting his with a steady, unwavering calm that seemed to draw the tension out of the air and focus it entirely on her. The distant hum of traffic along the nearby highway provided a constant background rhythm, mingling with the faint chirp of crickets and the occasional metallic clang of a car door being closed, creating an almost cinematic soundscape that underscored the quiet drama. As she approached, she held her tote bag lightly at her side, the insignia of her agency just visible when the angle was right, a subtle but unmistakable signal of the true authority she carried. Lucas shifted his weight, his initial confidence faltering as he met her gaze, and the crowd sensed the change, leaning slightly forward, eyes wide with unspoken questions. Vanessa spoke, her voice calm, deliberate, and measured, each word chosen to convey clarity without aggression. "Officer, I understand your concerns. However, I assure you that there is no misunderstanding about the vehicle or its ownership." Her tone carried the quiet weight of experience and authority, and even in the dim lighting, the firmness of her presence was evident. The sheriff opened his mouth to respond but paused, caught off guard by her composed demeanor and the subtle confidence that radiated from her every gesture. The air seemed to thrum with anticipation, the quiet click of a gas pump lever, the soft rustle of leaves in the gentle night breeze, and the murmurs of the onlookers forming a tapestry of tension that highlighted the shift in the power dynamic. Vanessa continued, her words precise and unhurried. "I am willing to cooperate fully and provide any documentation required. I believe that a review of the vehicle registration and identification will clarify any concerns." She gestured slightly toward the folder she held, the emblem catching the light, an almost imperceptible hint of the authority contained within. Lucas hesitated, the shadow of uncertainty now evident in his stance, as he looked around at the witnesses and then back at Vanessa, realizing that the situation had grown far beyond his initial expectations. Every subtle movement, every controlled inflection of Vanessa's voice, drew his attention and the attention of those around, emphasizing the quiet but undeniable reversal that had taken place. The cool night air carried the faint aroma of gasoline and asphalt, mingling with the distant scent of pine from nearby trees, as if the environment itself acknowledged the shift in dynamics, holding a hushed breath with the observers. Vanessa adjusted the strap of her tote, keeping her movements smooth and deliberate, her eyes scanning the lot with the practiced precision of someone trained to notice every detail, every reaction, every subtle signal that informed her understanding of the unfolding scene. The sheriff's earlier bluster had faded to a cautious attentiveness, his posture less rigid, a visible tension in his shoulders as he studied her every move. Vanessa's calm, measured presence dominated the scene without raising her voice, without motion that could be misconstrued, demonstrating a command of the moment that required no declaration. The crowd, sensing the shift, began to back away slightly, allowing space and acknowledging without words the quiet authority that had emerged. The fluorescent lights cast a cool glow, highlighting the contrast between Vanessa's composed figure and the sheriff's uncertain demeanor, the shadows stretching long across the concrete, as if echoing the change in control. Each breath she took, steady and deliberate, reinforced the atmosphere, drawing the focus of all present to her quiet confidence and the inevitability of the clarification that was about to occur. Even in the ambient night sounds, the distant hum of tires, the soft chatter of curious onlookers, the occasional flicker of neon, all became secondary to the presence Vanessa carried, a testament to her experience, her authority, and the calm command of the situation that had shifted entirely into her hands. The night deepened over the gas station, and the cool air carried a subtle mix of asphalt, gasoline, and the distant scent of pine from the edge of the lot, blending into the calm that now seemed to settle over the scene. Vanessa Carter remained poised near the SUV, her posture relaxed yet authoritative, each movement deliberate as she observed Sheriff Lucas Harrow with quiet intensity. The neon lights above flickered gently, casting long, shifting shadows across the lot and reflecting off the polished metal surfaces of the vehicles, creating a dance of light that accentuated the contrast between the sheriff's hesitance and Vanessa's steady presence. The crowd of bystanders, now slightly dispersed but still lingering at the edges, maintained a watchful silence, their curiosity tinged with a growing sense of awe at the subtle power Vanessa radiated without raising her voice or making any sudden movements. Lucas shifted from foot to foot, clearly struggling to reconcile the calm authority of the woman before him with his expectations of compliance and intimidation, the earlier confidence that had filled the air now replaced by cautious attention. Vanessa lifted her tote slightly, the emblem catching the glow of the neon lights, and gestured toward the documents inside with the smallest, almost imperceptible motion, signaling readiness to provide full clarification while maintaining her composed demeanor. Her eyes scanned the lot methodically, noting the position of witnesses, the direction of shadows, and the slight changes in posture of the sheriff, all recorded in her mind with precision, allowing her to anticipate and respond to the next moment with calm assurance. The distant hum of traffic along the highway formed a steady, understated rhythm, mixing with the occasional soft click of the gas pumps and the whisper of wind through the nearby trees, forming an ambient soundtrack that underscored the quiet tension. Lucas opened his mouth to speak again, his voice a little steadier but tinged with uncertainty. "I need to understand how this all works. Are you certain about this?" Vanessa met his gaze directly, maintaining the measured, even tone that had defined her presence throughout the evening. "Absolutely, officer. Every document, every record, and every identification will clarify the situation completely. There is no misunderstanding regarding the ownership or presence here." Her calm certainty seemed to ripple outward, creating a tangible shift in the atmosphere, the subtle power in her posture and voice commanding attention and acknowledgement. The bystanders, sensing the definitive turn of the evening, took small, cautious steps back, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and realization, watching as the balance of authority shifted subtly, yet unmistakably. Vanessa adjusted the strap of her tote once more, her movements smooth and deliberate, projecting a sense of readiness and control that contrasted sharply with the sheriff's tentative stance. The fluorescent lights overhead cast a soft glow across her face, highlighting the quiet confidence in her dark eyes and the serene assurance in the set of her jaw, a visual reminder to all present that calm authority could command the space without force. The ambient sounds of the lot, the hum of nearby cars, the occasional rustle of leaves, the distant siren, continued to punctuate the scene, yet they seemed to fade into the background as the focus concentrated entirely on the interaction between Vanessa and the sheriff. Every subtle gesture, every deliberate movement, every unspoken assertion of presence contributed to the growing awareness among those present that the situation had shifted irreversibly. Vanessa remained steady, a model of composed authority, while Lucas began to exhibit signs of careful attentiveness, his posture loosening slightly as he processed the significance of the documents he held and the quiet command of the woman before him. The night air seemed to hold its breath alongside the witnesses, carrying the faint scent of gasoline and pine, emphasizing the moment of transition where perception, expectation, and authority were all being quietly but unmistakably realigned. Vanessa's controlled presence anchored the scene, projecting clarity and competence that could be felt as much as it was seen, and the sheriff's tentative posture now mirrored the acknowledgement that the evening had taken a course entirely under her influence, the quiet, deliberate assertion of true authority unmistakable to every observer. The lot seemed to hold a quiet anticipation as Vanessa Carter calmly retrieved the folder from her tote, the emblem glinting softly under the flickering neon lights, and the night air carrying a crisp chill that brushed past her face, mingling with the faint scent of gasoline and the subtle hum of distant traffic. The small crowd that had gathered remained at the edges, their attention focused entirely on the interaction, whispering among themselves in hushed tones while maintaining careful distance. Vanessa opened the folder slowly, each movement deliberate, allowing the sheriff a clear view without haste or sudden motion, the documents inside neatly organized and precise, reflecting her methodical approach and attention to detail. Sheriff Lucas Harrow leaned in slightly, his shoulders tensing as his eyes scanned the papers, and Vanessa observed every subtle reaction, noting the slight widening of his eyes, the tension in his jaw, and the small shift in his stance, all indicators of the shift in the dynamics of authority. The fluorescent lights above cast a soft, diffused glow, accentuating the crisp lines of her posture, the calm expression on her face, and the quiet confidence radiating from her presence. The ambient noises, the distant hum of tires along the highway, the occasional click of the gas pump lever, the soft rustle of leaves in the night breeze, formed an almost cinematic backdrop, emphasizing the stillness and the focus of the moment. Vanessa's voice, steady and controlled, broke the silence as she spoke clearly. These records will confirm the registration, ownership, and my authorization to be on site. I believe they will clarify any misunderstandings immediately. The calm assurance in her tone carried a weight that seemed to settle the nerves of both the sheriff and the onlookers, establishing a subtle but undeniable authority without raising volume or displaying force. Lucas Harrow held the papers for a moment, shifting his weight uneasily, the initial confidence in his posture giving way to careful attention as he processed the information presented to him, the magnitude of the situation dawning with each passing second. Vanessa maintained eye contact, her dark brown eyes steady and unwavering, a quiet reassurance and an unspoken assertion that the situation was under control and that clarity and truth would prevail. The onlookers adjusted their stances, their curiosity mingled with respect, as they sensed the shift in control, the quiet authority Vanessa projected dominating the scene, without a word of confrontation or accusation. She carefully allowed a brief pause, letting the gravity of the moment settle, the subtle play of light and shadow highlighting the measured calm in her demeanor and the tension in the sheriff's, creating a visual narrative of control, observation, and measured presence. The air seemed to hum with quiet expectation, each small sound, the distant engine, the rustle of leaves, the faint whisper of the crowd, accentuating the focus on the documents, the exchange, and the subtle, deliberate demonstration of authority. Vanessa adjusted the strap of her tote, keeping her movements fluid and deliberate, maintaining her composure as the sheriff absorbed the information, each gesture reinforcing her quiet dominance of the moment. The night around them held a serene stillness, punctuated only by the ambient noises, as the balance of power subtly but unmistakably shifted, the sheriff now fully aware of the weight and legitimacy of the authority Vanessa carried. Every small motion, every deliberate glance, and the serene clarity in her demeanor drew attention, respect, and acknowledgement from those present, emphasizing the inevitable outcome of careful observation, patience, and the quiet execution of truth and competence in a tense situation where perception and reality had finally aligned in her favor. Vanessa Carter exhaled slowly, her shoulders relaxing ever so slightly as she observed Sheriff Lucas Harrow carefully. Leafed through the documents she had provided, the night air crisp against her skin and carrying the faint scent of gasoline and asphalt from the pumps around them. The lot was quieter now, the initial murmurs of the onlookers subdued into a tense, anticipatory stillness, each person unconsciously aware that the balance of authority had shifted and that the events unfolding were far from ordinary. Vanessa's eyes scanned the surrounding area, noting the positions of the witnesses and the subtle changes in the sheriff's posture, each adjustment a silent acknowledgement of her calm control over the moment. The fluorescent lights above flickered intermittently, casting sharp yet soft shadows across the lot and the polished surfaces of the SUVs, highlighting the contrast between the sheriff's uncertain demeanor and Vanessa's composed presence. She adjusted the strap of her tote lightly, moving with deliberate precision, her every motion measured, confident, and unhurried, projecting authority without a word or raised voice. Lucas Harrow's brow furrowed slightly as he looked from the credentials to the documents, the initial certainty that had carried him through the evening now tempered by the quiet gravity of Vanessa's presence. The soft hum of distant traffic, punctuated by the occasional click of a gas pump lever, provided an ambient rhythm that underscored the silent tension, a calm yet charged backdrop to the unfolding clarity. Vanessa spoke once more, her voice steady, precise, and even, carrying with it a subtle weight of assured experience. Everything you see here is in order, officer. All documentation confirms my authorization and the legitimacy of the vehicle's registration. Her words, calm and deliberate, seemed to settle the lot, commanding attention and focus, drawing even the sheriff's eyes fully to her as he processed the significance of the verification. The crowd, sensing the resolution approaching, remained silent, leaning slightly forward, every whisper and subtle movement magnified in the stillness, the night air thick with anticipation. Vanessa's dark brown eyes held steady, locking with the sheriff's for a brief, measured moment, conveying confidence and an unspoken assertion of authority that was both firm and unobtrusive, ensuring that the shift in dynamics was understood without confrontation. The distant rustle of leaves, the occasional faint siren, and the low hum of the highway combined with the steady, deliberate movements of Vanessa to create a tension-filled atmosphere, punctuated by calm certainty and controlled presence. Lucas Harrow's hand moved slowly over the documents, hesitation evident in his fingers, while his posture subtly shifted, shoulders less rigid and stance more careful, acknowledging, without a word, the quiet command Vanessa held over the situation. She allowed a moment of pause, letting the weight of clarity settle, the glow of the fluorescent lights playing across her calm expression and the sheriff's thoughtful, uncertain gaze. Every observer, from the closest bystander to those at the edges of the lot, recognized the subtle but unmistakable shift in authority, a change conveyed entirely through measured movements, deliberate speech, and composed presence. Vanessa's steady breathing, controlled gestures, and calm, confident expressions anchored the evening, establishing a clear, undeniable assertion of competence and authority that needed no confrontation, only observation and recognition. The night deepened, the shadows stretching longer across the lot, highlighting the contrast between the sheriff's cautious acknowledgement and Vanessa's serene command of the situation, the atmosphere thick with quiet respect, and the inevitable understanding that the moment had irrevocably shifted in her favor. Vanessa Carter closed the folder carefully, letting the subtle weight of the documents rest back inside her tote, and lifted her eyes to meet Sheriff Lucas Harrow's gaze, calm, unwavering, yet filled with an unmistakable clarity that left no room for doubt. The night had deepened further, stars beginning to prick the indigo sky above, and the ambient glow of the neon lights flickered gently, casting long, shifting shadows across the lot, highlighting the contours of both figures as if drawing a line between uncertainty and assured authority. The sheriff's posture had softened, his hands no longer rigid at his sides, his stance measured and cautious, the earlier bravado now replaced by a quiet attentiveness, each movement deliberate as he processed the implications of Vanessa's presentation. Vanessa stepped lightly toward the edge of the lot, her boots clicking softly against the concrete, the rhythm measured and calm, drawing the attention of the few bystanders who remained close, their expressions a mix of awe and intrigue, aware that something significant had unfolded in front of them. The cool night air carried a gentle breeze, stirring the leaves of nearby trees and the faint scent of asphalt, creating a subtle soundtrack of motion that complemented the quiet tension now tempered by understanding. Vanessa's voice broke the silence once more, steady and precise. "Officer, I hope this clarifies any concerns you may have regarding the vehicle and my presence. I am fully authorized and here for official duties." The calm authority in her tone seemed to settle the lot further, the onlookers shifting slightly, their whispers fading into a collective acknowledgement of the resolution that had quietly emerged. Lucas Harrow glanced down at the documents once more, then back at Vanessa, his expression a mixture of reluctant respect and subdued realization, recognizing the scope of authority she carried without any display of force or confrontation. The soft hum of the gas pumps, the distant traffic along the highway, and the gentle rustling of leaves blended into the background, leaving the focus entirely on the measured interaction between the two, the subtle assertion of competence, and the quiet resolution that had been achieved. Vanessa adjusted her tote bag slightly, her movements fluid and deliberate, the action precise enough to convey readiness and control, reinforcing the atmosphere of calm authority she had maintained throughout. The bystanders, now fully attentive, absorbed the scene with an almost reverential quiet, understanding that the evening had demonstrated a shift in perception and power, conveyed entirely through composure, preparation, and presence. Vanessa's posture remained upright, shoulders relaxed, eyes steady, projecting a command of the situation that did not require elevation of voice or gesticulation, a stark contrast to the sheriff's tentative movements and cautious gaze. The ambient light played across the lot, reflecting off the SUVs and concrete, highlighting the contrast between calm confidence and cautious recognition, the evening air filled with a palpable sense of clarity and finality. Each subtle gesture, every controlled inflection, and the poised restraint in Vanessa's demeanor communicated the resolution of the situation, the balance of authority clearly established without conflict or exaggeration. Lucas's eyes followed her movements closely, his hands lowering slowly as he acknowledged the effectiveness of calm, deliberate action, and the quiet weight of competence. The distant sounds of the highway, the occasional flicker of neon, and the night breeze created a rhythmic backdrop to the final moments of the encounter, emphasizing the contrast between the measured calm of Vanessa and the sheriff's subdued presence. The lot seemed to breathe with them, the ambient noises fading to insignificance as Vanessa's composed authority shaped the perception of every observer, her presence alone defining the resolution and leaving an unmistakable impression of the quiet triumph of preparation, clarity, and measured power. The night had fully embraced the gas station, the deep indigo sky stretching endlessly above, and the fluorescent lights hummed steadily, illuminating the concrete and vehicles with a soft, diffused glow. Vanessa Carter stood confidently, the subtle weight of her tote bag resting lightly against her side, and her dark eyes scanned the lot, noting the remaining onlookers and their subtle reactions. Each person seemed to recognize the shift that had occurred, the quiet authority she projected commanding attention without force or confrontation. Sheriff Lucas Harrow adjusted his stance, taking a step back, his hands lowering as the understanding of the situation settled in, and the earlier tension in his posture replaced by a measured acknowledgement of the true command Vanessa held over the interaction. The air carried a crisp chill, mixing with the faint aroma of gasoline and the distant scent of pine, creating an atmosphere that felt both serene and charged. The ambient sounds, the hum of distant traffic, the occasional rustle of leaves, the soft clicks of the pumps, providing a rhythm to the unfolding clarity. Vanessa spoke in a calm, deliberate tone, her words carrying the weight of assurance and precision. "Officer, everything has been verified. There is no misunderstanding, and all documentation supports the legitimacy of this vehicle and my presence here." The statement settled over the lot like a gentle yet firm wave, and the crowd responded subtly, leaning back slightly, murmurs softening into quiet acknowledgement, their attention fully absorbed by the display of composure and authority. Lucas Harrow's gaze shifted from the folder to Vanessa's steady eyes, and he allowed a faint nod, a silent concession that the balance of understanding had shifted, that control had quietly moved from assumption to verified fact, from expectation to certainty. Vanessa's posture remained poised, shoulders relaxed, movements deliberate, every gesture and inflection calibrated to project confidence and clarity without the need for confrontation, creating a palpable presence that required recognition from all present. The neon lights flickered intermittently, casting moving shadows across the lot, highlighting the subtle contrasts between the sheriff's careful attentiveness and Vanessa's assured stance, and emphasizing the visual narrative of authority and calm control. The evening sounds, distant tires on the highway, the occasional quiet footstep from a remaining bystander, the whisper of wind through the trees, interwove with the tension dissolved into comprehension, forming a backdrop that accentuated the shift in perception and the quiet but undeniable assertion of competence. Vanessa's dark eyes swept the lot again, noting the positions, subtle reactions, and attentiveness of everyone present, and she allowed herself a brief, controlled breath, reinforcing the calm confidence that had guided every movement and statement throughout the encounter. The sheriff shifted slightly, his expression composed but reflective, acknowledging through his posture and attention the authority and precision Vanessa carried, and the crowd, sensing the conclusion of the unfolding moment, began to release their tension, their faces reflecting a mixture of relief and quiet admiration. Vanessa made a final adjustment to her tote, her movements fluid and deliberate, the soft glow of the neon lights emphasizing the serene control she maintained, and the night itself seemed to respond, the stillness of the surrounding air echoing the calm resolution that had quietly established her as the measured authority in the lot. Every detail, the ambient light, the subdued crowd, the distant sounds of traffic, and the subtle shifts in posture and gaze, contributed to the unmistakable clarity that had emerged, the moment defined not by force or volume, but by the quiet, precise, and undeniable execution of competence, calm, and authority that now held the lot in a state of quiet resolution. The night air settled over the gas station lot, cool and crisp, carrying the faint scent of gasoline and asphalt, blending with the soft rustle of leaves from nearby trees, as Vanessa Carter adjusted her tote bag lightly on her shoulder and took a slow, deliberate step back to survey the scene one final time. The fluorescent lights above flickered gently, casting elongated shadows across the concrete and reflecting off the polished surfaces of the vehicles, highlighting the subtle contrast between the sheriff's cautious, measured stance and Vanessa's calm, assured presence. Sheriff Lucas Harrow now stood with his shoulders slightly relaxed, hands at his sides, his expression one of quiet acknowledgement, a silent concession to the clarity and authority that Vanessa had demonstrated throughout the encounter. The few remaining bystanders lingered at the edges of the lot, their expressions a mix of awe, curiosity, and respect, having witnessed the transformation of tension into quiet resolution, the subtle yet unmistakable shift in dynamics and perception. Vanessa's eyes scanned the lot, noting the positions of every witness, every subtle movement, every glance exchanged in the ambient glow, registering each detail with a practiced precision that reinforced her calm dominance of the moment. The soft hum of distant traffic, the occasional click of a gas pump, and the gentle whisper of wine through the trees created a rhythmic backdrop, emphasizing the serene yet charged atmosphere that surrounded the interaction. Vanessa spoke once more, her voice steady, precise, and even, carrying the weight of experience and quiet authority. All concerns have been addressed, and the documentation confirms the facts. There is nothing further to dispute. Her words settled into the night like a measured declaration, commanding attention without raising volume, asserting resolution and clarity through calm confidence alone. Lucas Harrow's gaze flicked between the folder, the documents, and Vanessa's composed figure, and a subtle nod passed his lips, signaling recognition of her command over the situation and an unspoken acceptance of the truth she presented. The bystanders shifted slightly, their murmurs reduced to quiet acknowledgments, each person internalizing the demonstration of measured authority and careful preparation, understanding that competence and calm had triumphed in place of assumption and uncertainty. Vanessa adjusted the strap of her tote once again, her movements fluid and deliberate, eyes sweeping the lot one last time, the subtle weight of her presence anchoring the moment and leaving a clear impression of control, precision, and unshakable calm. The shadows stretched across the concrete, reflecting the balance of awareness that had settled into the lot, the sheriff's cautious respect mirrored in his stance, the onlookers' admiration unspoken but palpable, and the evening air seemed to hum with quiet acknowledgement of the authority that had been asserted without force, without confrontation, only through measured action, poised presence, and undeniable clarity. Each step Vanessa took as she moved toward the exit of the lot was deliberate yet unhurried, signaling closure, the faint glow of neon lights catching the emblem on her tote as a subtle reminder of the authority and responsibility she carried. The distant sounds of traffic, the occasional soft clink of a gas pump, and the whisper of the night breeze wove into the ambient atmosphere, forming a serene, reflective backdrop as the lot slowly emptied and the tension dissolved entirely into a quiet resolution. Vanessa's presence remained commanding even as she prepared to depart, her calm, assured stance communicating the subtle, yet definitive victory of preparation, competence, and clarity, leaving every observer with a clear understanding of the shift in authority and the quiet triumph of measured action over assumption and hesitation. As she walked toward her vehicle, the shadows and lights of the lot seemed to follow in silent acknowledgement, the night air carrying the finality of the moment, the transformation of tension into clarity complete, and the understanding that in a world that often leans on assumption and bias, measured authority, preparation, and calm presence could define the outcome with quiet certainty.